right, let's go. Welcome to episode 61 of Roll or Die. Today we have a third degree black belt and head coach of Legacy, Thiago Braga. Welcome.
Thank you guys.
Thanks for joining us. Now, what we do, or what I do with some of our guests, I have in the background on the TV some footage of your whatever it may be.
I'm watching myself there.
Yeah, so there you go. So if people get bored, if our listeners are watching and for whatever reason they're bored, they've at least got something to watch in the background there. So I think this is PAMPAX 2018. So as Anton said, you're quite the competitor. You coach as well as compete. Tell us about that. How?
Yeah, well, I always liked competing. Since I've been competing in Jitsu, since I was 16. And one of the things when I moved to Australia, back in Brazil, we always had team traveling, competing together. And since I moved to Australia, that was one of my
Kim, are you experiencing Thiago?
Yeah, you're having some connection issues. I don't know why. It's very.
Let me open my door here. Sometimes it could be, blocking the Wi-Fi a bit.
We don't want to miss any.
Yeah.
Brother, we don't want to miss any of the goodness.
Yeah.
That's cool. Let me know if it blocks again. But
that's better.
What I was saying is, like, I've been competing, my whole life, and since I moved to Australia, I was always trying to get to create a team where I could travel and compete together and participate on that. And it was from 2009, I believe, that I got our team first, traveling to Adelaide to compete nationals with a group of 9-10 people. That was the first time that we were actually, the whole team traveling. And from there on, I felt that even when later on in life, I kind of sometimes will start losing motivation, as most coaches lose motivation to compete at some point. Yeah. I felt having that team traveling with me to compete was kind of a really good motivation to have that feeling of, that I had since I was a teenager, having the group traveling and competing. That's why we did so many PAMPAX nationals, and I still do. I still enjoy a lot.
So seeing other people succeed gives you a great sense of accomplishment and excitement.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Was in because when I started teaching here in Australia, I used to have, I didn't like in the beginning, and this is a honest thing, I didn't like teaching very much. I just like competing.
Yeah.
And when I started, I had a few students because I was actually exchanging jiu-jitsu classes for Muay Thai training because I was going to fight MMA. And then I had a few students that, white belts that were learning. And I started having one or two guys. One of the guys is one of my black belts today, that he was not only doing what I was teaching, but he was copying what I was doing. He was like copying my style. And for me, that was a bit fascinating. I was like, wow, that's really cool that there's someone that is paying so much attention to me that he can do the things that I'm doing. And it's just a white belt,
Yeah.
And from there, I started really enjoying teaching. Then later on, I felt, that was in 2005. Then I felt, imagine if one day I can have these guys competing, like in the same comps as me. We can go compete together. I think 2009, that's when we achieved that. And then I had that's when I had the first sparkle of a dream of, how would it be for me to have a black belt student competing in the black belt division with me? Like, I didn't think up until that point that I would have a black belt under me, And I think was in 2014 that I had let's say my first 2-3 black belt students, and one of my students was competing with me nationals. We competed like different divisions, but in the open weight, we end up closing the final of Yogi. And I remember that, the natural thing, as you guys know in jiu-jitsu, I'm his coach, I'm the senior black belt. The referee didn't even ask, he came to raise my hand, when we walked to the middle. Yeah. And I said to the referee, no, raise his hand, and then my student was the champion, and he was like, oh, watch out, you don't have to do this. I said, man, you have no idea. I've been here, I won the nationals, but to have my black belt student winning is like,
Wow.
You don't get how much happier I am, in this moment, like to be standing next to my student winning,
Man, you melt my heart, bro. That's beautiful.
Yeah. And that's where I feel, the whole thing you guys asked me, student, competitor, like this whole thing is a cycle that keeps going, because now, for example, I have last year, 2020, we only competed once, which was in February, the AJP in Sydney.
Yeah.
And we enter with 4 or 5 black belts and the other students. But we had 5 black belt champions in all divisions. And I remember that's one thing that, for all the boys were like, yeah, I'm champion and stuff is really cool. But for me, that photo that I have of all of us 5 black belt champions in the same competition, wow. I don't think they even understand how cool that is for me. You know what I mean? Even though it's just a local comp, but for me, these little things I think is my goals that keep fueling me to do more.
And what's the secret sauce of you and your club culture that is kind of working so well? Like, because obviously that is a huge achievement, local comp or not, but to have high levels of competitive people. I mean, our club goes through ups and downs as far as how much we compete. Like sometimes classes are full and they're pumping and everyone wants to compete. Other times, and especially after COVID, the desire to compete in our club seems to have dropped. Do you what is it about your club culture that is working so well for competition?
It's hard to say with us, and something really actually, like after COVID, we didn't know what was going to happen, right? We didn't even know if we would be back training as soon as we did. Well, for you guys in Melbourne, it was so much more painful than here. Yeah. But for me, like what I felt is as soon as the restrictions, eased and we were able to go back training, we had this flood of everyone that was training 1-2 times a week now wanted to train 5 times a week. Wow. And we didn't have competition up until a few months later. But my competition classes that we run at night, it started being so packed, and everyone was training like from July last year. Everyone was training, has been up until this day. Like tonight we have comp class, and I'm sure I'll have 40 people on the mats at least. Wow. And people were training so hard as the World Championship will be the next month. Yeah. And I still don't really have an explanation. I feel it's more that, when you have something that you don't value too much and it gets taken away. Yes. And from that moment on, you're like, wow, if I have it again, I'll never lose it. Yeah. I feel it's more like that, like everyone was training so hard, and there were no comps. Now that the comps are back on, everybody's like a bit extra. I think they're valuing more the ability to go compete. I connect with that a lot. When I got my black belt, I got my black belt actually on crutches because I had my an ACL reconstruction when I was 24. Wow. And my goal in life was to get my black belt before I was 25, And I remember when I was 24, I tore my ACL, but my coach still ordered me the black belt on crutches, at the gym. But I trained for, during my recovery, my knee wasn't bending all the way anymore. And I lost flexibility, lost mobility. And the surgeon said, it might go back to 60, 70%. Sometimes it happens. And he said, competition for you, probably not. You might be able to train lightly, but no more comps. And I was just 24, turning 25. Wow. So for me, that was a massive, and before that, I always competed, but I always hated the day of competition. I was always, I still nervous when I compete and stuff, but I used to dread that day. Yeah. 6 months later, when I competed the first time again, I remember walking into the gymnasium. You know how when you walk in and you have that feeling, oh my God, there's no air here. Everyone looks like fitter and stronger than me, and I could be at the beach today. It's a sunny day. I could be eating a burger now. It would be so much better than be here. Why am I doing this? And when I went back after my knee surgery, it was the first time that I went in feeling if I could be anywhere else in the world, I just wanted to be here. I remember waiting for the ref to call me in and feeling like, anxious, like, please call me in. I need to step on the mats again, and make and believe that I'm actually going to compete again. Wow. So that changed for me. That's what's changing for people. Like, I feel they are probably like, if I have a chance, I'll do it now. I won't miss it anymore.
This is an amazing story. Wow.
Yeah. And taking a step back, Thiago, tell us about when you came to Australia and your beginnings. Legacy is a very well-known club in Sydney, and it's now in Queensland as well. So yeah, tell us how you came to Australia and your beginnings.
Yes, well, I arrived here in 2004. You know, I'm a black belt under Paulo Guimarães. He's the head coach of Roots Jiu-Jitsu. So I'm a black belt under him. And for that reason, I was always part of, well, in Brazil, he had a different club. And in Australia, I initiated Roots. And I trained under him. And I'm still a black belt under Paulo, of course. Later on in life, I think when I was trying to, I think in 2010, when I decided to leave to work full time with jiu-jitsu, I started trying to understand, you know, how I could create, because my background is I study engineering and then applied finance. So I have a bit of a business mind behind, and a few things I believe, you know, if you see martial arts in general, if you go to the old karate school, the old Hapkido judo school, usually is a professional, an accountant, a doctor, an engineer that at a PCYC or the back of his house has a little dojo and he teach people at night. That's how we all grew up. Kung Fu, everything was always like that. The way Jiu-Jitsu is today, you know, is because a few people a few years ago kind of applied a business structure, you know, like the rest of the fitness industry to the sport and made possible for people to live of it, you know. So as a competitor, my whole life, I never cared about that. But when I started thinking about working full time with Jiu-Jitsu, I realized that I had to create something that would make it viable, you know, for me and other people to participate. That's when I created Legacy in 2012. And a lot of my friends that train with me started Jiu-Jitsu with me and train with me now for 10, 12 years. A lot of these guys, I felt like it would be really cool if they could live the same style as I do. So if you look, all the legacy academies that we have now, we have 8 at the moment. So we're not a big gym in terms of numbers. We're not like, you know, affiliating and getting people to sign up and open a legacy. But all these guys that work with me today are my black belts and my friends for over 10, 15 years.
Wow.
You know, so it's like a big family thing that we are doing. And I had a few academies approaching, you know, at times, we would like to affiliate and become legacy, you know, and I never said, no, you can't. But one thing that I find is, for example, I have a few of my students, black belts, that get to a point they want to live the same lifestyle, you know, and I want them to have the same lifestyle as I do as well. So I feel like there are only so many areas in one town that you can have the same academy. So by giving that to someone else, I'm sometimes blocking one of my black belts to open his academy when his time comes. And in these days at the gym, we have a line. We have like guys that are on purple, brown belt already thinking, okay, what is my goal in life? Is I will get to my black belt, I will open my academy, you know, because they are seeing everyone else not only financially successful, but, you know, like we can now get our instructors, gym owners, or whatever you call, and, you know, gather in the mid-morning and train, then go back to our gyms and work. So I think this lifestyle, you know, is hard to beat. You know, it's very, very rewarding, you know, like, and plus in jiu-jitsu, you know, so many other professions, you end up working with people that, you know, sometimes you don't like, sometimes it's not a nice environment. In jiu-jitsu, we are lucky that we pretty much only work with people that we want to be around.
That's great.
You know,
what did you
it's
find?
very different. Yeah, but sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, like, you were here. You decided, like, you could have worked in jiu-jitsu without having your own business, essentially. You know what I mean? But you could have, but you decided you had to create something, and it turned out to be an amazing choice that opened up all these doors for you. But I mean, you'd moved countries, you had restarted your life, and then you, like for me, because I'm a business owner as well, my main reason for going into business was I really didn't consider myself a team player when I went into business. I was like, I don't want to take orders from anybody. So I started my own business. That was kind of my driver as a 19-year-old or 20-year-old. But like, what was it that had you make the courageous choice? Because it would have been even a lot riskier back then opening a BJJ gym or starting a BJJ business, because the business model wasn't really fully established by then either. So it was a very risky move in some ways. What was your
I feel it was my case was probably very different to yours. It wasn't I never made a decision really, like when I was with my coach training, and for a lot of us actually, not only with my coach, but for most people, like I said, jiu-jitsu wasn't a profession. If you were, when I was training jiu-jitsu, you know, and teaching my first few classes, jiu-jitsu instructor was not a job, was not a profession. You know, you could teach jiu-jitsu and have a job. So for me, when I decided to work full-time with jiu-jitsu, it's not like I was brave to start my own business. I was more afraid of what would happen with me if I didn't, you know, like, because there was no option. If for example, in these days, if you go on sick.com and look jiu-jitsu instructor, there will be a position and a salary base there. This is a massive achievement. When I started working full-time with jiu-jitsu, I remember that people will come to the gym and train and say, "Oh, Thiago, what do you do?" I said, "Oh, I teach jiu-jitsu." "All right, but what is your job?" "Well, I teach jiu-jitsu," you know, like, and then people will be like, "Oh, right, man." So, you know, I know in their mind, they're going, "Okay, you're just a bum that doesn't do any work. You know, you just hang around the gym all day." You know, so coming from my family, like imagine, like my parents worked their whole life in banking. You know, my dad is an economist, and they were always, you know, like, you got to go to university, you got to study, you got to have especially for us in Brazil, the title you have, it's very important for your profession. So I was, you know, like, when I told them, like, I'm going to work with jiu-jitsu, you know, like, I was very surprised that they both really supported me. They're like, "Yeah, man, do what you feel," you know. I was like, all right. But then was inside my head was hard to tell people I was working with jiu-jitsu, and people have that reaction. "Oh, really? So, but what is your job? You don't really work there, you know?" And my achievement when I had Caio Tamura, that is one of my instructors now. I'm not sure if there is, if it happened before in Australia, but I remember when he started becoming one of my instructors, my greatest desire was I needed people to see jiu-jitsu as a profession. So I will feel comfortable with my own self, you know, being a jiu-jitsu instructor. Wow. So I remember with my instructors to pay them well. Like, I think Caio was probably, I could be wrong, but one of the first jiu-jitsu black belts full-time working, you know, like with jiu-jitsu, you know, with everything, sick leave, you know, like holidays and all of that. And of course it was great for him when that happened, you know, like, but for me it was when people at the gym now start looking and thinking about wanting to work with jiu-jitsu, even like, you know, 18, 19-year-old kids, they go, "I want to be a jiu-jitsu instructor. That's what I want to do as my job." For me is a relief. I said, okay, what I do now is a profession. You know, like when I go and on sick.com and there's people there and, you know, like advertising jiu-jitsu instructor job for, you know, like this much salary, you know, and hiring and stuff, I feel okay. We achieved it. We are in the workforce, you know, like if someone says now they are jiu-jitsu instructor, they have a profession. They are not just, you know, like a bum trying to hang out at the gym, you know. So for me, that was the main drive of starting my own business and creating, you know, this thing. I think was more almost like a personal thing that I needed to make what I do become a respected profession.
Like another competition to win. That's what it was.
Yeah. Even when we think now, you know, like, of course, I love competing in jiu-jitsu, and I probably will always will, you know, like compete in jiu-jitsu. But in these days, when I see, for example, our work with Legacy and many other academies are doing the same work, but when I see the number of people and families that their lives are changing because of, you know, the work we do, and in our gyms, we have like whole families training together. You know, like if you see, actually, we are considered like a competition team, but the number of full-time competitors, it's what, 5% of the gym, if not, if that, maybe less. You know, the rest is like lifestyle. And I find, and even the number of people, for example, just within Legacy, with 8 academies that live off jiu-jitsu now, for me, this is a much greater achievement, you know, than the medals that I have in a bag under the bed. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow.
You know, they are really cool, but they don't last very long. The enjoyment of that.
So what you're saying, Thiago, is that your team will be very hungry for the competition. So they'll be coming hard for the Pan Packs this year. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely. We are already organizing there's the Queensland State Championship now on the first week of June. We are planning to take a team from Sydney as well to support our Queensland academies and compete over there. Then everyone to come down and compete, you know, the New South Wales State Championship at the end of June. And on the second semester, you know, like things continuing going the way they're going, we want to go to nationals in Pan Pacific. You know, I wonder how it would be this year. I believe, my personal opinion, that it will double.
Yeah.
I think if you get 2019, 2021 will be double the size. All our comps in Sydney that are happening now are exploding in numbers. Everyone wants to compete.
Yeah. I agree. Well, I know that our Thiago is very competitive with the Sydney people, and especially with your club. So we will also be very keen. So sorry, Anton, I don't agree that people are not as keen. I think people are very keen to compete after last year. And I think, yes, there will be a lot of competition, which is great. It's great, you know, for Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, Melbourne is like it's where the main competitions are held, and some of the great competitors, you know, like in all divisions, you know, like I feel that competing in Melbourne is very traditional. Like all my biggest tournaments were always, you know, in the Alfred Park Aquatic Center, you know, so I feel like it's like in America, people think of the pyramid, you know, as the place they want to go and win tournaments. For us, it's Alfred Park in Melbourne, you know, like.
Good.
I'm very glad actually that Peter kept that same venue for so long. Because you know, I think as soon as you arrive there, it's like you have the memories of all the last 10, 15 years walking to the same place, and it's such a cool venue, and you know, such cool events there.
Absolutely. No, actually, on that note, like, because one of the things that really stands out to me when you step onto the mats, there's this kind of intensity. There's like an electricity, right? Like there's something different when you compete. And I'd love to know, like, what your pre-comp mindset. I mean, obviously now it feels like you're grateful, like you pull competing towards you where you used to be shit scared of it. Now you're like, I'm grateful for this. I want this desperately to get on these mats and get this going. But like, what else is there that is part of your secret sauce leading up to a comp and your competing mindset?
I really like, you know, before comps, when I'm first thing, like there's a few things. For example, if you notice, when I get to the comps, you know how we have the warm-up area, that thing I was saying to you in the beginning, and you have all those people from your division and warming up and stuff. I don't like hanging there at first. Beginning of the let's say when my whole division is there, I don't like hanging in there. I feel I don't like the energy, not because of the intensity, but because I know 50% of those guys, they're going to be knocked out first round. So there are a lot of guys that are in that room, and it took me years to realize that I felt like that, but a lot of guys that are in that warm-up area, they know in their minds, like, I'm out. You know, like, depending who they got in the bracket, you know, they are there just because they have to be there. So you have that fear in the air, you know. But when I get to semifinal, I like to hang out very close to those last four guys. You know, often I will be there in the semifinal, and the guys that will be there with me will be Will Diaz, Lachlan Giles, you know, Thiago Stefanucci. Like, all those guys, I know them already, and I know that those guys are there because they really believe they are going to win, and they're gonna give everything out there. So it's that good, you know, it's that champion's energy. I like to hang out, warming up next to them, even though I'm gonna fight them. But I like that energy because, you know, I feel like, you know, it's like, you know, now I'm among lions. You know, I mean, I want to be I want to be close to them, even though I'm going to have to fight them, but I want to be here. And that's one of my things that I always have. And the second thing is, and I always tell all my students is, when we go into a competition, our fear is not of losing, or tapping, or getting hurt. It's the fear of embarrassment, of doing something like horrible and being laughed at. It's like walking on stage and saying something horrible. So I always try to tell, one thing I do to myself is like, look, the opinion of 3 people matter when I'm there. The referee, because he's going to decide who wins or not. My opponent, because he is heavily invested on taking me out. Mm-hmm. And my coach, because it's the person that is there to guide me and, 100% back me up to win. Everyone else, they are spectators. Mm-hmm. They don't matter. Mm-hmm. Like just people sitting there that may possibly never have the courage to step in here. So whatever they're saying, booing, it doesn't matter. So I try to delete that from my mind and focus 100% on what is in there. And to be honest, I like competing. When I compete the BOA Super 8s and the fight events, I like to compete not at home. Home or at home, I like the crowd. I like the, when I'm competing BOA sometimes and I'm fighting someone from Melbourne. I think one of the events I fought one of the guys from Melbourne, and a lot of the crowd was like cheering for him. And I remember them screaming like, "Oh, okay, he's tired now. Get him." And I was like, "Oh, hell yeah." So cheering against me or in my favor has the same effect. It makes me go. So my mentality is more like that, and the enjoyment, of just being there,
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Awesome.
That's cool.
Your turn, Anton, I think.
Oh, that was my question. Yep. That was my question.
Oh, was it?
Yeah. Your turn.
All right. Well, we asked this. It would be a shame with someone with so much experience as you. People that are listening, most of them are pretty heavily involved in jiu-jitsu, but what would you say to someone that's maybe, feeling a bit flat, doesn't really want to pursue, they're in a bit of a funk with jiu-jitsu? Do you say push through, whatever, take some time off? What are your advice as a coach?
I would say I go through this all the time, because my fear of working with jiu-jitsu was how it would be for me, to have to do this as a job every day. And trust me, everybody says work with something you love and never work a day in your life. No, work is work. Once you have to repeat something 4 or 5 times a day, you have to follow a program, you have to, to teach, all levels of people. It can get tiring and boring, and it's a job. But when you are training, it's the same thing. I feel that everyone, whatever level you are, you go to a plateau. You evolve, then you get stuck for a little while. And what I find is when we get stuck or when you feel a bit flat or not evolving, it's very easy to lose motivation. So I believe motivation is not what will keep you going. It's just a discipline, and the way I try to make this not so boring, it's like change, make it. I have to make even teaching, I have to make my days fun. I have to find enjoyment in what I do. So I find, for example, someone is training, feel like you're not evolving, you're a little bit flat. Try something different even within jiu-jitsu. Like sometimes I have, a few years ago, I have one of my students, Hassan, that he's really into berimbolas, So I started for a few weeks practicing with him and just trying to get really into that game and just practice that in class with everyone. And I was losing, getting my guard passed, getting people taking my back. But I remember that I find a little challenge for myself there, like practicing something different. I have some of my students that are like, I have one of my students, Mark Brewer, he's a very high level national team of New Zealand in judo. So I like to train with him. I want to stand up. There's big chances he will take me down, but I like to give myself that little bit of a challenge. I like to play, to find different areas within the sport, because sometimes, when you are trying to solve a problem and you are for too many hours trying to solve that problem that you cannot see past, you are too stuck inside. I think that's what happened with us in jiu-jitsu all the time. So I try to make it fun. I try to enjoy my training with my training partners. I try to sometimes just relax into it. Sometimes I have a lot of students that they are so focused on being perfect and winning that coming to training becomes a chore, becomes like, not a good thing for them. If you are not enjoying, you will most likely not only not succeed, but you will not be able to continue. And that's jiu-jitsu and everything. So many people job because it becomes like that repetitive thing, you know, that you cannot get away with because you're following a structure. But in jiu-jitsu, I think you can adapt, make fun. Even when you have a 9-to-5 job, you have to find ways within your job to make it livable, you know. So it's the same thing in jiu-jitsu, I think.
What you're saying, do you think, because Anton and I have talked a bit about blue belts especially, they seem to be where, I mean, I'm sure it happens at all belts, but it seems really obvious at blue belt, a lot of people drop out. Do you think what you were saying maybe relates a bit more to that level? Why is it that why do you think so many blue belts seem to achieve the rank of blue belt and then disappear?
Look, jiu-jitsu, you know, there's a famous saying, there's a line in one of the academies that says jiu-jitsu for everyone. Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yep,
yeah, but your signal's a little bit off, I think.
Back now.
Oh.
Yeah, it's back.
Back now? Okay. Yeah, maybe cut off. So there is that saying, you know, jiu-jitsu for everyone. And I believe it's not exactly like that, as all other things in the world aren't, you know, like I believe it's like a natural selection. Stay in the sport who adapts to it, you know, stay in any sport, you know. And I believe jiu-jitsu is for every body type, you know. It's not like basketball. If you are like a very short person, you're not going to be an NBA player. If you are a very tall person, you're probably not going to be a high-level gymnast. It's just like a genetics thing. Jiu-jitsu is for every body type, but it's not for every person in terms of, you know, like some people don't like the physicality. Some people find, you know, like not don't have enjoyment in that. And I feel, like you said, around the blue belt I feel the white belt, the blue belt.
I think you're dropping out again, Thiago. Are you hearing that, Anton?
And experience of what jiu-jitsu is, and that's when they decide. Oh, sorry. Yeah, cut off.
Yeah. So
yeah,
you were just talking about the white belt. That's where we lost you.
Yeah. So you know, like the white belt is the person that, you know, by the time you get to your blue belt, I think is when you are, the blue belt means, okay, now you're qualified to start learning jiu-jitsu, you know, being so that the world championship starts from blue belt, not from white belt, you know. So I think a lot of people, when they get to the blue belt, is when they decide, okay, that's what learning is. It is for me, or it's not for me, you know. And like everything else in life, it's a long-term commitment. How long does it take to get to a black belt? I know there are some guys that got in 5-6 years, high-level competitors. It's possible, but it took me 9 years. It takes time, you know. And how many things in life humans in these days are willing to commit for a very long time, you know. We want everything instant, you know, like. And another thing that I think is wrong is that a lot of people train for the belt. If you're training for the belt, you are already setting yourself up not to succeed, because what happens when you get to your black belt? You know, then you hang.
Changes.
Yeah, you know, but a lot of people retire at that. You know, like a lot of people, for example, go to the white belt thinking, oh, I have to at least get a blue belt. I don't want to do this anymore, but I have to at least get a blue belt. Then they get the blue belt. Okay, done. I can say I'm a blue belt in jiu-jitsu. I'm done. You know.
Yeah.
It's that's the danger of setting up goals. You know, like because people always think on a long-term goal as something really far. But what happened when you achieve them? What do you do next? You know, I've seen world champions having this problem. You know, like I remember I was in America with Antonio Carlos Jr., you know, Shoeface, that is in UFC now.
Yeah.
When Buchecha won his first open weight, black belt open weight. And you know, I went with Antonio Jr. to pick him up at the hotel, and when Antonio went in to see him, and he was sitting in the lobby of the hotel, you know, like he said, man, Buchecha's just sitting there. And he's like, man, are you not happy? He's like, no, it's the happiest day of my life. You know, and he's like, whoa, you don't look that happy, you know, with the whole party, everything's for you today. He said, man, I've been dreaming of being black belt open weight champion my whole life since I was a kid. And didn't think it was going to happen this fast, you know, like I'm 23 now. And what do I do? Do I do it all over again next year? Do I go to MMA? do I open a school? Lucky for the whole world, he decided to do a few more times, but it's a tough, people don't think not achieving is hard, but keeps you going. Achieving is a bit like, all right, I got here. It's like when you're climbing the mountain, you want to go climb the Everest. You climb the Everest, you get to the top. What do you do next? Like you climb again.
The journey is the juiciest, brother. I hear you there.
Yeah.
Now, we are running out of time. Before we go, I really want to hear, like, Kim and I often ask this question, like, we are blessed to have you in this jiu-jitsu community, but how did you get into it? How did you start jiu-jitsu? Did you start in another martial art, or you get bullied? Like, these are the kinds of things we hear. What was your
I'll try to tell you very quickly, but it's a really, really, really interesting story. Like I was chatting with a guy the other day when I was a kid, on year 8, I think, when I was about 13, 14, I changed schools. I went from a local public school to a private school in my city. And in my first day of school, I was a bit mad that my parents put me in that school, and I didn't want to conform too much. And I saw this guy, this big guy in my class, and I felt, I was trying to be the rough kid from the public school, and I said, I will give him a bit of a scare, and he will probably, like, already, if he respects me, everyone else will, and I'll show who's the boss of the kids here. And I think I pressed the water fountain to splash water on his face or something. I did something silly, and we ended up having a bit of an argument in class, and I felt I was going to push him around a little bit, and he will be scared. And the kid double legged me, put me on the ground, mounted me, and then the other kids came in and separated. But I remember, like, getting hit on the ground, and I wasn't even mad that I was losing. I was thinking, how did he do that? What is this? I became his friend after, and I learned that he was a blue belt in jiu-jitsu, a juvenile blue belt in jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
And that's when I said, that's it. I used to do karate, judo when I was a kid. I said, I will do jiu-jitsu now. That's what I will do. And this friend of mine now, he is now the head coach of Gracie Maita in Artarmon, in Sydney.
Oh, wow.
Luca Sachs, yeah. So he's here now, and we're friends, and
wow.
And he moved to Australia as well, and he's probably following me, to pay back.
He needs to watch this podcast. This is amazing.
Yeah, when you bring him in, and it's funny, because I was talking to him about this the other day, and he doesn't remember the same way, because for him wasn't the same thing. He's like, oh, really? That's what happened. Like, he remember I started jiu-jitsu because of talking to him, but he doesn't remember that. Like, he remembers the events, but he's like, oh, really? Is that why you started? Like, that's interesting.
We just had one of his students on, and she spoke very highly of him. We had Melly.
Yeah.
Mel.
Yeah. He's a great guy. You guys should have him on at some point, because you have lots of stories to do. He came. Yeah. We trained in Brazil together in one of the toughest teams that you could possibly train. We were in Sul Jiu-Jitsu, which is Brazilian top team in South Brazil, and it was a gym that had, I don't know, 3-4 more black belt world champions at the time in a smaller town. So it was a really cool place to be trained.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Awesome. I think we're nearly out of time, Thiago. So before the recording cuts off, I want to thank you once again for giving up your time, and we will share this podcast. If you could share it for us too, that would be great. We'd love to grow our audience in Sydney, and look forward to seeing you in a competition soon. See you on the mats.
You're a legend, brother. Thank you, man.
See you.